Armed supporters of Zimbabwe's president on Sunday occupied the site where the opposition's leader was to hold a major campaign rally. Later that day, Movement for Democratic Change, or MDC leader Morgan Tsvangirai, withdrew from the race.
We will no longer participate in this violent, illegitimate sham of an election process.
On the same day, President Robert Mugabe spoke to supporters as scheduled. Speaking in Shona and English, Mr. Mugabe criticized Mr. Tsvangirai's claim that the campaign had been violent.
There is violence. My elections were not free and fair, which is a damn lie.
In New York, the UN Security Council on Monday voted unanimously.
The Security Council condemns the campaign of violence.
U.S. Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, the current Security Council president, read the statement. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told reporters that Mr. Tsvangirai's decision was understandable.
There has been too much violence, too much intimidation. A vote held in these conditions would lack all legitimacy.
The Zimbabwe government delegation objected. Ambassador Boniface Gichkausiko said the Security Council cannot micromanage elections.
The situation on the ground is not reflective of what we see in the international media. When I talk to people at home and what we see here in the international media, you might think you are talking of two different countries.
The U.S. Embassy in Harare provided evidence of violence. It released amateur video Saturday that it said showed a group of men fleeing gangs of militants. Witnesses say the militants, carrying sticks, roamed a township south of Harare wearing bandanas of the ZANU-PF, the ruling party. Opposition leaders accused backers of President Mugabe of killing more than 85 opposition supporters. Late on Sunday, Mr. Tsvangirai took refuge in the Dutch embassy in Harare. And opposition leaders say police raided MDC headquarters and took away 60 people who had sought the party's protection. MDC spokesman Nelson Chamisa.
You're talking about women and babies who are either injured or maimed or are not well because of the terrorism and the violence that has been perpetrated on them in the countryside.
In Washington, White House spokeswoman Dana Perino said President Bush is pleased with the UN action, that the international community spoke with one unified voice.
It was important that be a presidential statement, a president's statement out of the UN Security Council, because it has to be unanimous. Remember, South Africa is a part of that 15.
In a Washington news conference Monday, non-governmental organizations called for action. Speaking by video link from South Africa, MDC spokesman Nko Bizita Mlilo said the crisis cannot be resolved solely by Zimbabwe politicians.
The AU and the UN must then step in quickly and decisively.
The leader of a Southern African pro-democracy group, Dipros Muchina, called on the African Union to act when member nations meet Friday.
Whereupon the AU, following a AU Assembly decision, could send in a force which can either be a peacekeeping or a protective force or one kind or the other.
Daniel Kallengard of a U.S. pro-democracy group, Freedom House, said support is developing in Africa for such action.
What is most significant is that we have more and more African leaders, including presidents of major powers across the continent, talking for the need to address this situation.
During the presidential campaign, the ruling party has claimed electing the opposition would be akin to handing power to the West. A campaign ad showed an image of President Bush morphing into British Prime Minister Gordon Brown and then changing to the face of Mr. Tsvangirai. Mr. Mugabe told supporters that former colonial power Britain would control Zimbabwe through a puppet government.
A vote for the MDC is a vote for the British to have, once again, not just a foothold here, but real power.
Opposition supporters say during the campaign, Zimbabwe's rulers have victimized their own people through killings, torture, and intimidation. Jim Fry, VOA News.